Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with more videos. The beginning of the month, I've been buried in paperwork and taxes and technical issues and just, anyway, onto the card because that's more fun. This was for last week's Color Throwdown Challenge, but life as usual. So I'll still link to it and have the inspiration and all that stuff on my blog. But to start off with, I have just distress watercolor paper here and my little ink smushing sleeve. This is a Simon Says Stamp storage pocket, and I am creating a very light background. Not going to do a ton of layers. I want to keep it fairly soft. So I started with Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink, and I'd smushed that on the sleeve, sprayed it with water, and then pressed that onto the watercolor paper. And then I'm going to dry this. And after I've got it dry, I'm going to wipe off whatever was left on that sleeve, and then I'm going to add some salvaged PATINA Distress Oxide ink. So smush that onto the sleeve, sprayed it with some water, added that. Again, not going in very heavy. I'm trying really hard, and for me it is difficult because I like to add, 15 layers and as much intensity, but I wanted it light. So I was also soaking up some of the excess with some paper towel. And then once this background was dry, I needed a gold, and I've shown this before in videos. I've shown this Nuvo Glacier paste in many videos, but I've shown specifically mixing these two colors together because the gold is too light. I wish there was a deeper yellow gold. Oh, I would love it. If Tonic sees this, or if it's even possible, because you never know sometimes, so a deep yellow gold in Glacier paste would make my life. But anyway, I don't have that. So what I do is I just mix the bronze metal and the golden era together. No rhyme or reason. I just mix them together. I just worked on my little glass craft mat here. And then I have a scrap of white cardstock, and I'm just applying a thin layer of this to that cardstock, setting it aside. I'm going to let that dry. And then I'm just applying basically a smear of this over this stencil. This is Simon's Tin Tile stencil. So I just applied what was left over that. Again, set that all aside to dry. And then I grabbed another piece of distress watercolor paper. And this time I'm working with regular distress inks. I have Twisted Citron, and I added MOWED Lawn just to deepen it a bit. This time I'm going to do more layers. This time I'm going more intense because I'm going to die cut this with some greenery wafer dyes, and I want this to stand out a bit more on the background. So I smushed my first layer, dried this with my heat tool, and then I was even picking up what was left over on my glass mat as well, because why not? And I'm just going to keep going in and adding to this to get it to what I want. So I used up every little bit that was on my little smushing sleeve. I added more MOWED Lawn and Twisted Citron Distress and just kept going to town, just really filling this in, kind of almost eliminating any white space for this because, like I said, I wanted it a little more intense but still true to the color combo I was going for. So after I used up literally every bit both times, I'm going to go in and also add a bit of Distress Oxide ink again. It just adds a little extra something. It's subtle because I just used the Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink, but it does add a little bit of something. I don't know. There's something about layering the different types of inks together too that can just end up being really fun. So once I was happy with that background and it was completely dry, I ended up die cutting that with Simon's Tattered Leaves wafer dye. And my stenciling of the Glacier paste is dry. And then that little piece of cardstock that I had done that to, also dry. And I die cut the butterfly body from that. And then I decided I wanted my sentiment, also done with the Glacier paste. So I pulled out both those Glacier pastes again, and I keep press and seal, especially with Glacier paste. I've talked about this in a lot of videos. Glacier paste and glitter paste, those two specifically, more than any other brand or type of paste, I highly recommend either press and seal I always link to it because Simon does sell it for people that are international and can't get their hands on it. Or you can also try regular, cling wrap, whatever. I'm just really encouraging you guys to, if you get this paste or similar type paste, to really make sure you've sealed your containers, because this stuff will dry out extremely quickly otherwise. However, I've had mine, the original colors when they came out 2.5, 3 years ago, whenever it was, I still have them. They're still good to go. So highly recommend. Anyway, I remixed the color. I wasn't concerned if it wasn't like the exact same match, but in the end, like, you can't even tell. And I did the exact same thing. I just lightly applied it with my palette knife over another scrap of cardstock. This stuff dries fairly quickly. I don't know how long this took to dry because I think I left it for a day. It dries really quickly and it dries quite flat. And I haven't had a problem die cutting it. I think this is the first time I've ever done it, like used it and then actually die cut it. So I also took a piece of the same watercolor paper and I'm just blending salvaged patina and peacock feathers distress inks using just one of my little blending brushes. It gives a very just subtle, a little bit of an ombre. I just wanted to kind of intensify that salvaged patina a little bit. So it kind of goes from, from lighter to darker. So I blended that onto this cardstock, and that's what I'm going to die cut the outline for that Hugs wafer die with. And then the little butterfly body, I ended up die cutting the kind of the scrap of that outline. So I've got that turquoisey sort of color, and I trimmed off the little antennae off that die cut piece, and I'm adhering that over this little die cut body. So basically the butterfly body is going to be two-toned because I found with everything going on, it was just kind of being lost. And this butterfly wafer die, this is the Etched butterfly wafer die from Simon. I couldn't find it for the longest time. I had to go through my stash and it was hiding behind other things as always. But anyway, I die cut the wings from vellum. Oh, love. I will show at the end like kind of a close-up because it etches it. That's why they call it etched, but it etches all the detail into your die cut regardless of what you use. But it did that with the vellum and it's so pretty. So I adhered the wings and the bodies together, got my little butterfly, and then for the sentiment I die cut the top layer from that piece that I'd added the glacier paste to, and then I die cut a couple more layers from white cardstock, and I'm adhering them all together with craft tacky glue so that it's, bumped up. It's got the dimension, because dimension is life, aka Laura Fedora. And then once I've got those layers adhered, I'm going to adhere this to that little ombre outline that I had created. And I've already got my leaves die cut. I was able to fit 2 on that wafer die. I'm only going to, on the piece of cardstock. I'm only going to use 1 for this card. I'll save the other one for a future project. And then I took a little companion sentiment from the CZ Designs Spring in My Step stamp set. And I went through my embossing powder, and Simon's antique gold embossing powder is like a perfect match to this combo I created from the glacier paste, the bronze metal and golden era mixture. That's kind of it's basically like an antique gold color. So that was just a happy little coincidence how well that went together. I was like, oh, it's all matchy-matchy. I'm not too concerned about it, honestly. That was always the thing for the first 15 years of card making, like the obsession with exact color matching. I'm a lot more just go with it. Things don't have to match exactly. Things don't need to be perfect. Perfection is overrated. You know what I mean? But it's always nice when little happy coincidences happen and it's like, ooh, this random product matches this random product. So anyway, I embossed that little sentiment and trimmed it down. And then on the inside of my card, I'm going to use that tin tile stencil again. I had washed it off immediately after using it and it's completely dry. So I just taped the stencil into place. I had masked off the card, the score line on the card because I was originally planning on using the, going over the entire stencil. But in the end, I decided to not go all the way to the edge. And I'm just blending that twisted CITRON Distress Oxide ink over this. And then once I was happy with how that looked and just kind of a random variation of it, once I was happy with that, took off the Post-it tape. I'm going to put this into my Misty and I'm going to stamp another sentiment from that Spring in My Step stamp set. I'm going to line that up on the inside of the card here, and then I'm going to ink that up and stamp it with the Salvaged Patina Distress Oxide ink. And I'm going to ink this up and stamp it a couple times to get a good, solid, even impression. Also to intensify it just a little bit so it's, you know, nice and legible over that stenciled background. So that's going to finish off the inside of the card. So now that everything is basically done, it's just a matter of adhering everything into place. So for that little sentiment that I had heat embossed, I just took a couple little strips of the scrap cardstock and adhered that behind there to give it, again, a little dimension. And then everything else I'm just adhering with dabs of craft tacky glue. I'm not adhering this Tattered Leaves wafer die like completely flat in place. I'm letting parts of it just pop up because it gives, again, a little more dimension. And then just the tiniest bit of glue behind the body of this butterfly so that the vellum wings pop up. And because it's vellum, it doesn't need any extra adhesive. Like that little bit of glue, once it's dry, that thing ain't going anywhere. So I adhered everything in place. And then I folded my card base. I'm going to adhere the card front to the card base. And then, of course, I'm going to add bling. I didn't add splatter, but I'm going to add bling. And, of course, I have matching bling because I have 5 bajillion containers of bling. I have these are deep pool crystals from Little Things from Lucy's cards. And I'm just going to adhere those into place. No rhyme or reason. I've talked about, you know, odd numbers and triangle formations and all that kind of stuff with embellishment placements. But with things like this, I'm just placing them wherever I think, you know, it's like, oh, this spot needs a crystal. This spot needs a crystal. Whatever works. So that finished off the card. As always, I will have a link below the video. I'll link to my blog post and I'll have a supply list. I'll link to all the supplies I used so you can check that out below if you are interested. Stay tuned. I do have a whole bunch more videos coming. So as always, thank you all so much for watching, for subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, all of it. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.